So I finished watching episode 2, The Golden Rule. It's a reference to the mantra that Lucy embodies. It's the foundation of her philosophy. The ghoul knows that rule. He even cites it mockingly after an encounter with a giant irradiated scorpion. And it's the first point in the show in which the ghoul is actually kind of rattled. And they're there because Lucy hears the cries of a woman. They find her and a man. The ghoul offers to help the man, or he pretends to offer. Then he slits his throat, eats a piece of flesh, then spits it out afterward once he realizes that it's contaminated flesh. Lucy is disgusted and dismayed. The ghoul manages to kill that scorpion by shoving a grenade into one of its orifices. Before he lands that fatal blow, he even grabs that woman, uses her as a meat shield. So they're both wounded. Lucy's got one stim pack, uses it on the woman, declares, "I'm not going to be like you, never ever. I'm going to treat this woman like a person because I'm a person. I'm going to treat you like a person even though you don't deserve it." That's basically the gist. And so she leads the woman away. My first viewing, I thought that woman's cries would have been part of an ambush. And then later in the episode, that was the ambush. Those forward positioned Caesars Legionnaires. I know they're from the Fallout New Vegas game. Heavily inspired by a certain epoch of Roman history. I can see why people might be kind of annoyed at Lucy. She's kind of like a broken record, but it's central to her character. And that's the central story question. It's not so much, will she maintain her humanity and Vault Dweller values? It's more like, how will she be able to adapt and hang on to them while still being able to survive? There has to be a little bit of uncertainty. The only way I could see Lucy like just completely discarding her way of thinking and living is if it's at the ultimate climax of the show. Maybe she finally confronts her father. And instead of sparing him, she does like what the ghoul would do. Now, speaking of her father, Hank McClane, responsible for the nuclear bomb detonation that destroyed Shady Sands, that had been referenced in season 1. This episode starts with a flashback that sheds more light on how that event had unfolded. The opening shot is the ruins of probably Los Angeles to establish that it's post-Armageddon. Shots of Shady Sands really convey that it's prosperous, it's safe, comparatively speaking. There's a shot of a man kind of mumbling. He's a traveling merchant, doesn't draw too much attention until he passes out. Maximus's dad inspects him. He notices the telltale bloody tears. Now, I don't think they had known, but it's obvious to the audience because the show has established that visual communication. So he finds the brain-controlled device. He senses that there's something wrong with the caravan, so he uncovers the atomic bomb. Maximus's dad, both heroically and somewhat foolishly, tries to disarm the bomb. And he accidentally on purpose triggers the failsafe mechanism. The show had taken the time to convey that he is mechanically inclined. He would have had maybe the best chance. Maybe it was going to go off anyway. And that's when he tells everyone to flee. Grabs Maximus. He and his wife put him into that fridge that we see him in season 1 through a flashback. That's how he survives. The bomb goes off with a bright flash. There's a cut to Hank washing his hands with clean water. It's a callback to Maximus's dad finding that clean drinking water. It's also a pretty on-the-nose metaphor. There's a shot of Hank looking in the mirror. Adds a little bit of depth to his character. Up to this point, he's mostly been portrayed as this determined company man. And then we hear a young girl calling to him. Got to be Lucy. I mean, in theory, he could have other daughters. The show makes Hank really spell out, "Hey, Lucy." I thought that was unnecessary, but whatever. He's got the okie dokie, that chipper facade. And we know that he knows that the bomb has gone off because of his Pip-Boy display. Flash forward, he's continuing the mind control experimentation as he promised in the prior episode. He rides through the complex in this unique looking golf cart with 3 wheels, goes to the livestock repository, takes a mouse up to that lab, and there's like this training montage. So each time a mouse dies, he goes back, gets another one. It's kind of played for comedy, but it's communicative. It shows that he's like maybe somewhat arrogant. He thinks that each iteration will be the one time that it will work. It also shows his like tenacity. He wouldn't have made it this far if he weren't determined. Later, he tested on a Vault-Tec customer whom he wakes up. Same thing happens. He mentions how like the family unit is essential, which is kind of ironic because he's like really not a family man. He's a family man, but not a truly loving family man. Now, at the finale of season 1, he makes the case that he did it to save whomever. Hopefully this season will kind of like not justify his action, but maybe better explain the rationale. Going back to Maximus, because of his understandable longing for safety and family, that's why he's taken to the Brotherhood of Steel. I think at one point he even says that. Cleric Quintus at one point calls him son. Maximus is like very visibly pleased. Maybe it's a choice by the actor or the director, but the way he delivers his dialogue, he kind of quivers. He's trying to make every word that he says, every utterance, like something important and profound. It's kind of annoying, but the more that I think about it, it actually fits the character. He would be a pompous figure trying to build up himself and his cause. I like just some scenes like Maximus just kind of talking to his squire, young squire, his exchange with Dane. They're not totally drinking the Kool-Aid. Dane mentions how they used to like quote the Codex of the Brotherhood in a somewhat mocking way. Maximus is like, it's not perfect, but it's worse out there. If we can steer this order in a good direction, then why not do it? The culture of Maximus's chapter, full of like meatheads playing with the live grenade in the hangar, where they uncover this very pristine vintage car. What do? They shoot it to pieces. Quintus, realizing that they've established near endless supply of power because of those fusion cores, he's gathered leaders from 3 other chapters of the Brotherhood. It tells them that we're gonna just keep things to ourselves without the knowledge or approval of the Commonwealth, even though that's effectively declaring war with them. The other chapter leaders are resistant, but once they see how much power, like literal and figurative power, they can wield, they're on board. But at the very end, a liaison from the Commonwealth, Harkness, flies in, exchanging a look after Maximus has killed this huge guy in a duel. Definitely planting the seeds for not just strife between the Brotherhood chapters and the Commonwealth, but also planting the seeds for Maximus to like repudiate, discard his current affiliation, maybe going toward the Commonwealth. They're kind of based on the East Coast near Massachusetts. Of course, we can't forget Norm, the unthawed Vault-Tec junior execs. They realize that things aren't as they had hoped or expected. Recognizes that they idolize Bud, whom he has not killed, but more or less stashed away in a corner. He tells them, if we really are going to lead the Vault-Tec into the next era of humanity, we need to find a way out of this vault the way that Bud wanted us to. They find an actual ladder that Norm, understandably, is reluctant to climb out of just because of the uncertainty. I mean, obviously the height is a hazard, but for him, now that I realize it, would be like a huge psychological hurdle to overcome. He's been in the vault his entire life, knowing that it's not actually Reclamation Day, despite what he's told those Vault-Tec junior execs. Once he sees the surface, to him it's beautiful. Nice contrast between his perspective and the junior execs, because again, they would have been alive during the before times. Episode 2, return to form. Multiple storylines 4 of them by my count. Kind of ends somewhat abruptly, but it sets up intrigue, interesting questions for the next episode and the rest of the season.